a liquor store has opened across the street from a school in Mangere, and the school and the local board are considering their legal options while restrictions are in place for the liquor store owners, such as closing between 3 to 4. You talked about, well, first up, should a liquor store be open opposite a school around the panel? I have my own views on this. Brendan Horn, what do you think?
Oh, look, it's not so... We can't protect everybody from their environment, but what does that mean? Well, whether it's across from the school or 400 metres down the road. But the thing is, there's one liquor licence for every 228 people in New Zealand. That's far too many liquor licences. And we need to do something about that. That does sound like a lot, Jackie, doesn't it? That does sound like a lot.
Well, I mean, we've changed the legislation so that the decision-making has been put into community hands, and the District Licensing Committee is the one who is peopled with locals, and they make the decisions. Well, the community in this case, Lydia Sorsini, from the chair of the Mangere Otahuhu board, says this is devastating, quote unquote. So what do you think about the proximity of the liquor store to the school? Jackie Dean. Well, the liquor store is upstairs. It's an R18 store. It's a different licence which has been held for 20 years by the same company. There's only one liquor sign outside. They still can't sell to minors. They still can't sell RTDs, and they still can't sell to drunk people.
Jacinda, what do you think? What do you think about that? I mean, they've had the place since 1994. They're doing the best they can. They've taken the alcohol out of the ground floor.
My understanding is that they were a grocery store. And grocery stores actually were never really intended to ever be able to, a small little dairy, ever be able to sell alcohol. That's one of the reasons...
It's upstairs.
Well, now it's going upstairs, but that's one of the reasons the law was changed, because we do have too much saturation, and I think it just doesn't make sense to have a liquor store in such close proximity to a school.
Even though the police are satisfied...
I mean, the nearest is a kilometre away.
Yes, but the police are satisfied, 3 to 4, close, no RTDs... The recommendations have been...
I'd be interested to see whether or not they were entirely satisfied. But look, the community has said, we don't want it there. What would solve this issue is once the council puts in its local alcohol plans, that actually could say, we don't want them near schools, but they're not in place yet. So it's really unfortunate that that's happened.
But it's also true that this was a publicly notified consent, and there were no objections. The applicants went to the school, they didn't object. They went to the church next door, they didn't object. So there's been pretty good process.
Yes, but the chair of the board does. She calls it devastating. Other principals have called it. Robin Staples, Southern Cross campus. There is no place for a liquor outlet at the first gate at the school. Tūrara, what do you think? Because you talked about this in Parliament, didn't you? Proximity of schools and liquor outlets.
Yeah, I say in no way should alcohol outlets be straight opposite the gates of a school. We attempted to change the legislation when it came in front of Parliament to have the notion about proximity to schools be a part of the amendments to be made to the Act, but it wasn't supported by the government. But on the other side of the coin,
you'd like to them have supported it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I think that what's come apparent by both this case and another one that happened out in Wellington here at Cannons Creek is that the people need to have a say. And at Cannons Creek, Tariana, as the local MP, went out to listen to the community who said that they did not want any liquor outlets right next to the school, and it changed it.
Okay.
Now, and following that, the community came in behind it, and they haven't managed to tip over the decision in the licensing authority.
Well,
speaking
of Cannons Creek, we have someone who knows. We do, Wallace. It's Nick Leggett, the Mayor of Porirua City. Welcome along.
Good morning. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for coming back. You're one of our favoured guests here on Backbenchers, one of our least controversial mayors as well. Good to see. Do you think the new Act gives enough power to local government?
I do. I think, and Cannons Creek's been brought up as a good example. What we've known as a result of the Cannons Creek decision, the crime rate in that area has dropped by 50%. And Jacinda's quite right, though. The local alcohol policies are not yet in place, and that's the problem that you're seeing in South Auckland. So communities have not been able to have their values enshrined in a policy that then allows a district licensing committee to take account of. But I want to talk about a little bit. I represent a pretty diverse sort of community, and there are parts of our city where there are liquor stores opposite schools, and they work. People aren't concerned, licensees are responsible. And then there are parts of the city where the community is not happy with that. And what we need is for these policies to be developed and for the community's views to be taken into account when licences are either applied for again or granted. And I think we're set up well to do that, and I think it's going to be a really good example of where, we don't want either extreme of the argument to dominate, but there to be a sensible, practical middle ground.